I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is the author of the book The Death and Resurrection of a Baseball, no other than Mr. Douglas Peterson.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Welcome to Book 101, and can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So, as your listeners just heard, my name is Douglas Peterson. I live northwest of Chicago, Illinois. I have a debut novel out called The Death and Resurrection of Baseball. It's been out since May of 2022, and it's doing well. And I full time I work for a large aerospace company. You can probably guess which one. I've been in the IT field for 30 plus years. That's what pays the bills. And I'm married with 6 kids and 7 grandkids and a cat.
What age did you realize that you're good in writing?
Well, actually, pretty early on, probably in high school. Papers that I wrote for school, I got comments on from family that I had a gift for writing. So throughout my IT career and elsewhere, I've written newsletters and website copy and technical documentation, and just have always enjoyed writing.
Who are your favorite authors that influence you the most?
Nothing that really, at the top of my mind is a favorite, but I do like stuff by Tom Clancy. I liked William Fortune's novel, 1 Second After, and also David Aikman's novel, When the Almond Tree Blossoms, both of which contributed to the storyline of my book.
So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, short term would be to continue to promote the debut novel, and long term would be to finish my second novel and get that out there into the world.
That'd be awesome. So, before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening according to my ranking tops in the last 30 days. Because in Zambia, I got number 7 on the Apple chart, Pakistan at number 20, Spain at number 21, Qatar at number 29, Slovenia at number 45, Nigeria at number 56, Chile at number 68, Oman at 120, Egypt at 136, Zimbabwe at 139, Singapore at 154, Norway at 168, South Africa at 192, Cambodia at 212, Belgium at 234, and a lot more. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Mr. Douglas Peterson. Mr. Douglas, The Death and Resurrection of a Baseball, how did you craft it?
Several years ago, I read a story about games that kids used to play before the first American Civil War, and that went extinct, and no one plays them anymore. They don't know the names of them or anything, and that kind of stuck with me. I'm a Civil War buff myself and have an interest in that. Also, I read 2 other books that were very pivotal in helping me formulate a story for my debut novel, as I mentioned just briefly a few moments ago, David Aikman's When the Almond Tree Blossoms, which is a fictional account of a second Civil War in America. And then William Fortune's novel, which is a fictional story about an EMP attack against the United States. So, um, all that in mind, I started tossing around the idea of writing my first novel, and I do have a very strong passion for the sport of baseball. Been playing it for the better part of my life. I still play it actually, but it's softball. But it's I still think of it as baseball. But in any event, I wondered about what would happen if a major sport like baseball were to die. How would it die, and then how could it be brought back years later? So that formed the nexus of the idea about the novel, and so I came up with this storyline that involves baseball having died as a major sport, and then 100 years later, the story in the book actually starts 100 years later, after the end of a Second American Civil War, and the story picks up with a 12-year-old boy. The main character's name is Joe Scott, and he becomes the conduit for really rediscovering the sport of baseball and reintroducing it, this lost part of American culture, to his current era in the future.
Can you describe the research process behind your debut book?
Yeah, so a lot of obviously researching the game itself and some of the history, um, researching also the scenarios of a second Civil War, God forbid, in the United States, and also the effects of an EMP attack in the country. So, but primarily, researching baseball. So, but the story is a good, clean read, and it is primarily about baseball. I don't want to mislead your listeners, but there is a strong undercurrent in the story about what has happened 100 years in the past, as far as the characters in the book go, and how this Civil War helped destroy large parts of American culture, and obviously, a great many number of lives, unfortunately. But that's all in the past, and the story picks up America's at peace again, and it's lost part of its culture. It just doesn't know it, because it's 100 years in the future, and a lot of things that were lost culturally were destroyed by the war.
Yes. So, what challenges did you face while writing your book?
It's just the finding time to write, and that's always a challenge, especially when you're working full time and you have a family and other obligations. The other challenge was a couple of times just hitting a block and trying to figure out how to continue on the story. I had a clear idea of the ending of the story. There are some parts, in the in between the beginning and the end that I paused and maybe redirected a few things and changed a few things around. So, but yeah.
How do you deal with the writer's block?
Well, for me, I just give it a little time and try not to beat myself up over it. I hit one really big one though, and I knew I had this story in me. I pass this block and get it going again. So I told my wife that on Labor Day weekend of 2021, I was going to drive out to Iowa, to Dyersville, Iowa, to the motion picture, the Field of Dreams, and go spend the day out there and try to get re-inspired about continuing on with the story down onto the pages. So it was a very profitable trip because I went to the movie site for the Field of Dreams, of course, the famous movie with Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones, and I played ball on the field for I don't know a good 3 or 4 hours. I spent about half to all these tourists that were coming to the movie site. It was kind of fun. And then when I was done, all of a sudden everything just became clear. And I sat down literally in the bleachers at the Field of Dreams. And I had brought my laptop with, and I started writing again. The block was gone, and all of chapter 6 and parts of chapter 7 were written in Dyersville, Iowa.
Interesting, Mr. Peterson. So, how do you feel your personal experiences have shaped your writing?
Well, just having been exposed to a lot of writing throughout my life, I think helped me have the confidence in myself to be able to sit down and tackle a project like a novel. And I had help with some family and friends that helped provide early feedback to the draft. So yeah, it was a fun process first time around.
So, how's your daily writing routine like?
Well, I don't write every day because I'm still working full time, 5 days a week. So when I do find time to write, you know, the nature and scope of the second novel is very different than the first. The second one tackles the issue of, again, God forbid, a second American Civil War. So I've been doing a lot of research on um, his places, some of which have a tie-in with the first Civil War, but also a lot of research on government and military and ranks in the military and so on and so forth. So I I pour all that into my efforts, and I'm moving along. So I'm up to chapter 17 in the second novel.
Wow. You are most welcome to come back to promote your second book. So, what's one theme or message you hope readers will take away from your The Death and Resurrection of Baseball?
Well, the one thing that keeps coming through the reviews is that the book is a message of hope. And baseball, for most of its existence, has been a metaphor for America itself. And so this comes out in the story very powerfully. It also brings back a lot of memories for the readers as far as our own childhood goes, and particularly those that played the sport of baseball in their youth. And but the overall message is again one of hope. It's a feel good story, and of course I would be most honored if your listeners were to decide to go out there and pick up a copy.
So, how have your previous work influenced this current book?
Well, I headed up a church softball league for many years, and a part of the league was writing a league newsletter once a month. So I did a lot of writing in that capacity. It was obviously all focused on softball, which is very similar to baseball. So that helped being involved in the sport again as an adult to become reacquainted with the sport and also especially writing about the sport as well.
Very well said, Mr. Peterson. So, how do you handle criticism, constructive and negative?
Well, I try to handle it well. I did have a set of beta readers that read the draft copy and provided feedback. And made changes accordingly if I believe that the criticism warranted change. Um, for the most part, the reviews out on Amazon have been very favorable. A couple of just one or two one star reviews, but most of them are 4 or 5 star reviews. In fact, the current ranking of the book is 4.6 stars. And then about 3 weeks ago, I got notified by Reader's Favorite, which is an international book award contest, that my book had been selected as a finalist in the sports fiction category. So I didn't win first, second, or third, but hey, having your first time book selected as a finalist in an international book contest, I thought was pretty good.
Congratulations, Mr. Peterson. And what is your inspiring message for those aspiring writers out there?
Yeah, so it can seem like a daunting task to sit down for the very first time and try to write a novel. My advice is just sit down and start. I mean, you know, you can learn as you go along. There's groups available out on Facebook that can help you. You can certainly loop in family and friends to give you feedback as your manuscript comes along. But the biggest hurdle really is yourself, and you have to get over get over that hurdle of just getting to a point where you sit down and type in the first word of your novel, and then just let the rest flow.
Yes, people, go for it. If you have the passion of writing, or you love writing, go for it. Probably you are the best in the making, like Mr. Douglas Peterson. How do you approach character development in your stories?
Well, my debut novel has a couple characters that are conglomerations of people that I know, and I know them well enough to know, uh, you know, what they like, what they don't like, how they respond to certain things, and so that helped model, uh, especially two of the main characters in the book, Joe Scott and his grandfather. And as far as moving them along, I was very careful to pay attention to continuity, pay attention to personality style, and also obviously age, and just to keep that in mind as I progressed into the story.
Are there any upcoming project that you want to share to us?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I am writing a second novel. This one's kind of a loosely tied prequel to the baseball book. And the second novel is entitled The Sum of All Our Anger, the American Second Civil War.
How has the publishing process been for you?
Well, I went through a very long search for an author representative in order to get published. What Unfortunately, what I ran into was that since I finished my book in the fall of the pandemic, year number 2 in 2021, I collided with who knows how many tens of thousands of other people that had taken that time of isolation to sit down and write a book, or to finish one they'd already started. In my case, I had started in 2016 and finally finished it, like I say, in 2021. So I made about I don't know, it was about at least a 6 month effort to try and find an author agent representative, as they call them. I got some encouragement along the way, but unfortunately, I was not able to land one. So I did go the self-publishing route, but I did go wide. I'm widely self-published, so you can you can find my book obviously on Amazon, but also on Apple and Google and Walmart, and Barnes and Noble online, etc.
What is the most rewarding aspect of being an author?
Just hearing people's reviews and comments about how much they liked the story, and that it was a story of hope for them in a very troubled and divided, not only country, but a very divided world right now. So it's cool to read those comments and to hear them. And I've been on quite a few podcasts as well, and so it's been nice to get all that kind of feedback.
Definitely. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the five-star restaurant in downtown Toronto. And plus one more, our books are out. Not only one, but 11 volumes, people. Food 101, Volume 1 Basics, up to 11 is only the books that you need how to create a delicious food, available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. How do you feel about the current state of the publishing industry nowadays?
Well, I think it's undergone a revolution, really. Before the self-publishing option became an avenue for many, many good stories, tens of thousands of them, actually. It was very difficult, obviously, to get a publishing house to take on a debut work for a debut author. So I think it's only a good thing that this has happened. I think it's allowed a lot more creativity, and obviously a lot more new authors to be found, because it is a known fact that some self-published authors are discovered by major publishing houses, and they go on to bigger, better things. So it's all a positive thing, in my opinion.
If you go back and give advice to yourself when you were first starting out as a writer, what would it be?
Don't wait so long to write a book. So I started writing in 2016. I'm 64 right now in this year, and so I started writing 58 or so when I first took on the project. So
Then, Mr. Peterson, so the death and resurrection of a baseball. What do you think the best highlight?
the best highlight of the book, there's two of them really. There's a chapter that takes place in Iowa, and of course the last chapter is I think many readers the last chapter. So
So, if you want to go back and revise the book itself, what part of the book you want to revise?
I can honestly say none of it. I'm happy with what came out.
Which chapter did you enjoy the most?
Well, the end chapter, and also the chapter in Iowa that takes place.
And which chapter did you have struggles with?
I would say there's one particular chapter. I call it the sci-fi chapter. Readers will understand when they come across it, but it took me a little while to get that down.
And lastly, where can our listeners find more about you and your work?
Yeah, so they could go online to author WilliamRDouglas.com. Again, that's author WilliamRDouglas.com. And there's all kinds of good stuff out there. There's all my podcast appearances. The book trailer, which got over 5,000 views, is out on the front page of that website. And also all the links to some of the major outlets to pick up a copy of the book. So obviously Amazon, Google, Apple, Barnes and Noble. The book's available in Audible format, Kindle, paperback, and hardcover.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Douglas Peterson, because if you support him, more and more books to come. Yes, and thank you, FageSpot, for being the number two best book podcast on the planet. And of course, number one food art podcast in the category that need to be followed this 2023. Douglas Peterson, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. Have a good evening.
Welcome, people. See you soon.